right. And thank you to everyone for being here. I'm excited to be part of this workshop offering to the community. It's very important to me that we reach as many people as we can. So I'm thankful for this platform and for each of you for participating in this space. So who wants to talk about spirit guides? Hopefully that's why you're here, because that's what we're talking about today. And really any of these topics that I can cover, I can talk about all day. So it's going to be tough to squeeze everything into an hour, but we're going to do our best. Most importantly, we want to talk about what is a spirit guide? What are the different types of spirit guides? Why are they there? How do we connect to them? How do we sort out all the voices in our head, right? So let me start by asking you if you have had any experience with spirit guides. You guys can just type that into the comment and share that with us, the kinds of spirit guides that you've experienced. Some questions that we can think about to start getting us on the page of our own spirit guides. How do you experience the voices in your head? In our culture, there's a kind of a joke about, yeah, the voices in your head, and you're kind of meant to sound crazy, right? If you're like engaging with these voices in your head. And indeed, on a heavier note, there are some mental disturbances, at least called by Western medicine, that one of the symptoms can be speaking to the voices in your head, or even just hearing voices in your head. So for that reason, I'm careful if I go to a Western doctor, how much I share with them about how much I really do talk to the voices in my head, because certainly I'm not crazy. And especially the more I get into my healing work as a light worker, I do encounter more and more different entities and spirits and brand new energies that I've never even heard of. So it's important as we go through the class, as with any spiritual practice, that you keep your heart and your mind open and kind of just turn off that switch. So the flow of thoughts coming from everything you knew before, we can kind of unlearn that and just start learning a new paradigm here. So how do you experience the voices in your head? Do you hear any? Do you hear a lot? Do you just hear one or two? Some people do just acknowledge God as one entity and don't break it up into voices. Sam says that she has received messages of guidance. Thank you for sharing that, Sam. So some of you have been hearing these voices and have been open to receiving the messages, and I super commend you for that, because it can be confusing and it can be scary to just kind of trust in your intuition for the first time. Do you recognize any of the voices? Do you recognize any of them as being you, or maybe a relative that's passed over that you might remember? Do they offer guidance, encouragement, criticism, support? All the voices are not friendly, and we'll get into that in a minute, but part of the trick is learning discernment. Just like you do with humans, you don't just instantly trust any human that walks up to you on the street and wants to talk to you. In the same way, I encourage you to have discernment when you are encountering spiritual beings and talking to these voices in your head. Always be discerning and ask questions, and I'm going to teach you more about how to do that in a moment. Have you associated any of those voices with a name, a face, a role, or a personality? Ninfa says she often feels her mother talking to her, especially in times when she needs advice. That's a great example of a spirit guide of her mother who's transitioned before her, and now she has that ability to come through and offer advice to her. That's such a beautiful gift to have that in your life. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll give you an example of one of my spirit guides. I'm often driving in my car, and you know how when you're driving in your car and you're going to work or you're going home or you're going to the kids' school, it's like you can get into autopilot, right? And you're not really thinking, oh, I'm going to make a right up here, I'm going to get off the freeway. You just kind of do it. So I always follow these same routes on autopilot. And very often I'll have a voice or I'll have like a message come through, just, you know, get off the freeway here or make a left here where I might normally make a right. And I've learned that voice to be my one specific guide. I call him Captain, and his whole purpose is just to give me direction. So he might give me directions in the physical realm in that example that I offered you, but he also helps me like with astral traveling when I'm moving through and without different dimensions. So that's one guide that I've come to know over the last 10 years or so, and he has a very specific purpose. Some of our guides will have specific purposes in that way. Some of them won't. Some of them we might know the purpose. Some of them we might not. So again, just kind of stay open to whatever is without having any expectation. Whether we know it or not, we all have a team of guides working in our favor. And remember that what I'm talking about is not attached to any religion or dogma. So I invite you to take the parts of what I'm saying that resonate with you. And if there's anything that you might want to tweak or turn a little bit to make it fit for you better, please feel free to do that. So anywhere where I'm talking about spirits, you can always plug God in there or whatever word it is that resonates with you. But we do all have these energies that are working with us, protecting us, and guiding us. Whatever you want to call them, that's completely up to you. When you get to know your own personal spirit guides, then you will be receiving that information yourself as far as what they want to be called.
You have a question in the chat box.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead with the question.
Nympha would like to know, do the spirit guides come through our dreams?
Yes, they can. There's really no limit to how they come through. It's just how open are you to receiving? And it's so important. I'm going to say this a million times. It's so important to not have expectations. So if you're expecting them to come in your dreams and they're not, let go of that expectation and be open to them, you know, coming through a human or coming in the mail or coming in a song. So you never really know how the messages are going to come. But yes, absolutely, dreams is probably one of the major ways that you'll hear people relate their experiences with their guides. Me personally, they don't really come to me in my dreams. They don't wait for me to be asleep. They'll walk right up to me right now. In fact, you might even see me get interrupted because a message will be coming through. So just be open to that. But yes, they do absolutely come in dreams. And I'm going to mention that again in a little while. Before we get into the types of spirit guides, does anyone else have a question or a comment, something they want to share? Zavoya, you can feel free to read anything out if somebody commented.
I don't see anything as of yet.
Okay, cool. So let's get into the different types of spirit guides. And I listed as many here as I can think of, and this is based on my own experience again. So these are all types of guides that I personally have had an encounter with. But certainly if you guys know a different one that I haven't covered, please share that with me so that I can expand my repertoire as well. So the first spirit guide I want to talk about is the higher self. This is a term that you hear a lot in the spiritual community. And the higher self is based on the understanding that we are more than our physical body. We are not our physical body. We are energy. We are spirit. We are a little piece of God, a little drop of the ocean, that divine ocean. So all of us actually does not fit in this physical form. We exist beyond the physical form. We actually exist beyond this dimension into higher dimensions. If this is a new concept to you, existing in multi-dimensions, I would suggest doing and looking into researching a little bit more on your own, because it's really a big can of worms that you open up. But we do exist in these other dimensions bigger than our physical body. So the higher self is that part of you that's beyond the physical form. And because it is beyond the physical form, it's outside of time and space. So your higher self is that highest version of you that has a bird's eye view of your entire existence. It can see your past, present, and future simultaneously, can also see into past lives, things like the Akashic records, and connecting to all of that collective wisdom, ancestral wisdom especially, that we have access to all the time. So through this higher self, we're directly plugged into our divine source to be able to receive guidance and information that's very specifically for us and based on our own DNA blueprint and our own soul purpose, et cetera, et cetera. So the higher self is always there guiding you. I'm sure we can all relate to having an experience where maybe we were in a bad place or in a bad moment emotionally, or we were doing something that we knew wasn't right, or maybe we didn't know that it wasn't right. And there's just that voice, that says, don't go in there, or are you sure you really want to do that? I'm sure we've all had those experiences. That is the voice that I would attribute mostly to the higher self. It's also important to know that the higher self, as this goes for any of your guides, they're not going to interfere. So don't rely, this doesn't relieve you of any responsibility of leading your own life and making your own decisions and being responsible for yourself. These are simply guides that are kind of on the sidelines. You can even think of it like little, traffic signs along the way. Slow down, dead end coming up. But you always have that free will and that choice to just blow past that sign and ignore it, right? So it's the same with our spirit guides. We always have a choice if we want to listen, if we want to take the advice, if we want to ignore the advice. I don't suggest ignoring the advice. Not if it's from a guide that, you're sure this is my guide, this is my grandma, this is whoever. They have a way of getting our attention. And sometimes we can find ourselves in an illness, in a car accident, with a broken leg, whatever it might be. And we might realize in hindsight, okay, you know what? My guides were telling me all along to do this thing or not do this thing, and I wasn't listening. So now they have intervened and kind of forced you to listen. So I just want to throw that out there. That definitely happens as well. I can tell you many experiences where this has happened to me. They were telling me something for years and years, and I don't want to listen. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to do it. And then guess what? I'm forced to do it by some unforeseen circumstance, and it ends up being a lot worse than if I would have listened in the first place. As far as higher self, you can also speak to the higher self of others, because this is their higher level of consciousness. As a healer in my work, a lot of times this becomes necessary if there is trauma or something that's really hard for the person to face. I can kind of protect them and just deal with their higher self so that they're not having to be triggered by healing the trauma. Also, I've had experiences where there was an ill patient, even somebody who was in a coma. So I was able to contact the higher self, get permission from the higher self, because the physical self was completely absent. Any questions about the higher self?
You have a couple of comments, and one from Johanna. Dragons, the FAE, the mermaid, are different types of guides as well. And Samantha chimes in with our gut feelings, which I hadn't thought about, but yes.
Yes, absolutely, Sam. I'm glad you brought that up, because gut feelings, yes, we can classify those like kind of with the higher self, but this is a different kind of guidance system, I would say, because our body has its own guidance system. So this is kind of separate from what I'm talking about today. I don't want to get too far off the topic, but it's also important to create that mind-body connection so that we are able to receive the subtle messages from the physical cues as well as the emotional cues. But those cues do come from the actual physical body itself. And Johanna, thank you for that comment. I know how you love dragons. I promise you we're going to get into it in just a moment. Okay, so moving on, the next topic, the next type of spirit guide I have on the PDF is former humans. So this is probably the most widely known type of spirit guide, the guardian angel. And you see this in a lot of different religions, a lot of different cultures. So the guardian angel is usually somebody that you've known in life, a family member, a friend, a lover, even a pet. Sometimes it's an ancestor or somebody that you haven't met in life, but is somehow connected to you. So we have the guardian angel. And again, we have access to the ancestors, not only our own ancestors that are related to us directly in DNA, but the whole of human ancestry, the whole of human history is all actually accessible to us through this channel where we talk to the spirit guides. And I have a note there that guardian angel is not to be confused with archangel. And we'll talk about archangels again in a moment. But guardian angels, like I said, are usually, they've been human before. So they exist more like fifth or sixth dimension, depending on where they are in their evolution and their dharma. While archangels have never been human, and they are in the 11th dimension. So they're a much higher dimensional being, higher frequency. You could even say a little bit more difficult to channel because of that. Okay, we're going to move on from that into animal guides. This one's one of my favorites because I love animals, first of all. And it's really the only spirit guide that you can kind of see walking around, you know, in your life. So animal guides come to you in different ways. Sometimes you might be sitting outside and a butterfly lands on you, or a bird just lands, you know, right near you. A lot of times at my ceremonies, I have an owl come into the ceremony. It's definitely a spirit guide coming with a message. Sometimes you might just keep seeing a recurring animal, like on a movie you watched, hear it in a song, there it is in a book. Then your son comes home and he drew a picture of it. And you're like, what's going on with all these sloths in my life? Always take these things to be messages. So you can look up what's called the totem. And this comes from Native American cultures. And I think they have it in other cultures around the world, but that's where I heard the word totem. So there are several reliable websites that I personally like to use, and I've shared them with you on the PDF. Whatismyspiritanimal.com. That one's my favorite because it has all these wonderful illustrations. It also has memes. So it has, like, you know, the animal and just a short little blurb about what the totem means. And I use these a lot because my clients text me a lot. Oh, what does this mean? I saw, you know, this in my dream, or I was at the mountains the other day and I saw this animal. So I'll get one of those little memes and just send that over. Quick and easy way to send that meaning. There's also spiritanimals.com. That one has a couple fun things where it'll even generate a spirit animal for you or a message. And then the mindful.com has a really concise list. And on one of these sites also has, I'm trying to find it on the PDF here. I'll probably find it in a minute. But one of those sites also has what they call like mythic animals, right? Like unicorns and dragons and hathors and things like that. So that can be fun because those things pop up a lot too, especially for Johanna. Dragons pop up all the time. For me, fairies a lot. I see fairies outside a lot, and like different nature spirits. So I'll tell you in a minute when I get to it, but one of those sites has that on it as well. And if somebody else has found it before me, please go ahead and share it. Okay, so here's where I mentioned something about dreams also. Animal guides can appear to you in meditation, in real life, or maybe in a dream. I very often hear of departed pets visiting in dreams. Not sure why, if that's an easier, like, second density way for them to get through, but a lot of times the departed pets will come through the dreams. And just like encourage you to be open to any experiences that you have with animals, to look at it as a spirit guide and start to look up the meaning and find the messages that are available to you in those experiences. Any questions or comments about animal guides? Sam says she's had pets who died traumatically, visit her and let her know that they were okay. Yeah, that's very sweet. I hear that a lot with people and animals. They want us to know that they're okay so we don't continue worrying.
I want to share something that happens to me. I had a cat that I had it for the first time. And during the pandemic, he got develop a big cancer in his throat, and he died really, really quickly. Like in a week, he was gone. Oh. And then, you know, I was so devastated. And then one morning, I just walked by my door, and there was this beautiful, beautiful, huge yellow cat just standing right there through the window and looking at me. And I really felt like Nico sent me that cat because I never seen him before. And he was just standing at the door looking at me with this beautiful face. And he had so much light around him that you know, and since then he comes every day. He has never stopped coming. He's my, I named him Leo. And he comes every day, and he's just, my children adore him. And we, even though he's an outdoor cat, we don't know who the owner is, but we feel like he's our family, and that Nico sent him for us to be comforted after losing him in such a fast, devastating way. So definitely very nice experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like Johanna would like to ask a question as well.
Okay, go ahead, Johanna.
It's not like a question, it's more like a comment. I just want to share that you're talking about the angels is this book by Diane Cooper. This is a library copy, but it's a new light on angels, and it will go and it'll tell you the difference between the archangels and how there's pretty much angels for everything, even like house angels, finance angels. Like you can literally ask for anything. You can have your angels talk to other people's angels, and one of the things that this book points out, and a lot of other places that I've like listened to, is that the worst thing you can do is worry about somebody, and the best thing you could do is pray for them. And you could have your angels talk to your angels to help them guide to their angels, you know. But this is a book that I was talking about in the comment. I just kind of wanted to give everybody a look of what it looked like, just in case you guys are interested into reading it more. It's a really good book. Personally, I like it. I've had it going on 3 weeks so far because I just don't want to give it up yet. But that's all I wanted to share. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and one big more thing. The Fae is the fairy community. The F-A-E. I wanted to clear that up. That's the Fae, and that's the fairy community.
I've never heard of that. Thank you so much. I didn't know if it was a typo or what it was. I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's basically the plural for fairy. So it's one fairy, many fae. Yeah.
It's not even just the fairies. It's the fairies and the gome and everything that falls under the fairy type community. So It's like a whole fae community. A whole fae community. Okay, I'm going to let you go back to your teaching. Sorry.
Can I share something? Hi, I'm Vinny. And I'm from India, right? So we have so much, what you're talking today takes me back to India, but I recently had such a, it was a heartbreaking incident, but I know we believe we are Sikhs from India. So it's like always that there is God and angels protecting us. So when we leave our house, we pray that angels protect us and protect our family and the whole world. So I had this job, which was like door to door. I had to knock on people's door. And guess what? I had this small little kitten, beautiful white colored kitten. I'm not fond of cats. Okay. I don't know how to deal with them. I don't know whether I should pet them. But this little kitten followed me from one block to the other block. And I kept telling her, I said, baby, go back home. I'm not going to take you home. But she followed me, and there was this meow, meow, meow. Yeah, I reached a home which had iron bars around it like a fence. And I used my key to kind of make a lot of noise. So if there were any dogs, they would come up front. But nothing happened. So I opened the gate. And in the meantime, that little kitten went inside the bars, followed me up to the door. I knocked the door, and from the corner of my eye, I saw a pit bull, a dog, right? Now this kitten is sitting in my feet. And so the dog didn't sniff me, but the dog sniffed that kitten. And the kitten shook, right? So can you imagine? That dog picked up that kitten and ran into the garden. That gave me enough time to run out from the door out on the road and lock the gate. And he killed that kitten. So for me, I sat down and prayed there. I knew she had come to save my life. If it wasn't for that kitten, my leg would have gone that day. So my point why I brought this up was like, definitely if we become more alive and aware, I feel the presence of my guru around me all the time. And he's there protecting us. So thank you for letting me share this. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, we can see why animals are our favorite, because we all have so many experiences with them. And I love how we're open to, this is part of Tantra, is being open to seeing everything as the divine. So no matter how small or insignificant, I mean, the last story that was shared was certainly anything but small or insignificant. But even when it may seem small or insignificant, still being able and taking that moment to just shift your perspective a little bit, get quiet and still, and look at this experience or this entity as that little piece of the divine. Like she says, your guru is around you all the time. It's so true. And everything, we're all parts of God. So nothing can be taken for granted, no matter how trivial. Okay, I'm going to move us on to Ascended Masters for fear that we'll talk about animals all day. Okay, Ascended Masters. And here's where I'm going to talk about archangels. So for me, I put some examples of my Ascended Masters: Jesus, the Divine Mother, all the archangels, the saints, and yes, Bob Marley. So I'm concluding personal experiences and examples for you to hopefully relate to. But Bob Marley has been one of my spirit guides, probably the first one I ever remember from being a little girl. He would speak to me and I somehow would know his music, but my parents never played his music, but I knew his songs, like the words, I could sing them. It was so crazy. And he's still with me now. In fact, my youngest daughter, he named her. He came to me in meditation before I knew she was a girl. And he said, name her Kaya. So her name is Kaya. But we all probably have different experiences of these kinds of people who maybe, you know, they've gone before, or we have heard of them, or they are some type of celebrity that we connect with. Be open to this also being a type of your spirit guide. And especially with people like Bob Marley or Ram Dass or some of these wonderful teachers, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, who have departed, they are now on this higher plane. They're now an ascended master, and their wisdom and their guidance is accessible to all of us all the time. So yes, they were so powerful when they were here on earth, but they were confined by time and space. Now they can be everywhere with everyone all the time. And it's so beautiful to have access to these different types of guides. And for all of us, they will be different. They'll be different people. The archangels also are in the 11th dimension. They've never been human. These are considered on the same plane as ascended masters in that 11th dimension. And yes, there are many books, many sources of information that break down all the hundreds of archangels. I'm still learning new ones all the time. Though the ones I work most closely with are Metatrons, Archangel Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Jophiel. So there's about a handful of them that I work with on a regular basis. And sometimes one will come through that I don't know, and I'll get to meet a new one just for a day or two, and maybe I don't see them again. Okay. A few more types of spirit guides here. We're just going to run through them. We have deities. So for me, I work with deities such as Ganesh, Kali, Tara, green Tara, white Tara, all the Taras, Kuan Yin. And I do like the word God. Usually I say goddess. Many people will describe their experiences of speaking with spirit guides as talking to God. I have a lot of friends and family members that are Christian and Catholic, so they don't necessarily want to break down a bunch of voices. They just talk to God and that's it. Sometimes there's also a belief about like idols and things like that. So they might even choose not to pay attention to certain voices on purpose and really just focus on their connection with Jesus. Perfectly fine. There's no rules here, only guidelines. So whatever resonates for you, whatever fits in line with your belief system, your upbringing, your religion, please adapt these ideas and suggestions to fit perfectly for you. I think probably our last speaker, I don't remember your name, I'm sorry, but you probably know about Tantric Yoga. This is something that I know comes from India. And I love this practice because it's just a devotional practice to a deity. And sometimes you choose one that you take through your whole life. Me, myself, I work with different ones at different times in my life, but I always have Ganesh and Kali there. And I often in my yoga practice will do a devotional practice or a bhakti practice that's just all about directing love towards this deity, towards this archetype. But it's also a meditative practice of becoming this divine archetype. So we're actually taking on that energy of ourselves, and we see ourselves as becoming that divine image. Very powerful practice. Okay, getting a little weirder now. Extraterrestrials. Some of us might be closed off to this, and that's fine. You can throw this part away if you'd like. I would have liked to throw this part away until I had very up close and personal experiences speaking and working with the Pleiadians. So I've even had I had one stuck in my closet at my house one time. Very strange experience, but they're definitely there. There's extraterrestrials, there's interdimensional beings that actually live within the earth, within the second density. For example, we have the lost race of Atlantis. And actually, I think there's 3 different races that came from Atlantis. There's many stories of one of these races living within Mount Shasta. You go up to Mount Shasta, you might have an experience meeting these entities. There's lots of stories if you want to look this up online. It's very fascinating. But there are many different races. I don't know them all. I've heard of like Blue Avians. I've heard of Pleiadians. I have friends that work with Arcturians. I'm sure you guys know ones that I haven't mentioned. But if you're open to this, you might have an intention to speak with somebody from this race. A lot of times this comes back to our own history as well. So I've received a lot of downloads and meditations about, you know, thousands of years of history, human history, and how certain races did start on other planets. I could talk about this for hours, but there's just so much here. And if you are interested in working with extraterrestrials, working with an extraterrestrial crystal such as moldavite or any other kind of tektite is a good way to start tapping into that energy. I wouldn't suggest going with the Hollywood route of what extraterrestrial experiences are like. I would look more to like Pleiadian disclosure, starseed codes, accounts like this on Instagram that are reputable and actually are kind of verified channels of these races. Okay, so lastly, we have earth spirits, and this includes plant medicines, the fae, the fairies, nature spirits, dragons, unicorns, sprites and orbs that I often encounter when I'm like hiking in the mountains. You'll see different lights and shadows of different energies that exist up there. And also when I say plant medicine, one of the things I am certified to do is work therapeutically with psilocybin mushroom. So in my own experience with those type of ceremonies and other plants as well, there's a specific shaman that is attached to that plant. So when somebody makes the commitment to work with the plant for the purposes of healing or ascension, furthering their consciousness, that shaman will step forward to work with you. So it's actually an entity attached that's behind that physical form that is fully capable of communicating and guiding you if you're willing to connect. And I refer to a lot of these as lower earth, or you'll hear people say inner earth. And this is referring to that second density. So just as we're in the third dimension, and there's all these guides and entities we can work with in higher dimensions, there's also the lower second density of earth. And there are a lot of different energies and spirits that are within the earth, that are part of the earth, that might even be stewards of the earth, that work as an in-between, so we can actually communicate with them. Oh, yeah. And I will say also, working with these beings of lower earth will support you in things like shadow work. So anytime we're going into those deeper depths, we're looking at shadow, we're looking at things that are buried and hidden, absolutely call upon these second density beings to support you in that, because they are there in the darkness all the time. So they can certainly guide you. Okay, before I move on, is there any other questions? Let's keep it just to questions and not comments right now, because we're running short on time and I want to get to the practical part.
Francine has a comment there.
I don't see anything in the chat.
Yeah, let's just go with questions for right now, because like I said, we're getting short on time. So let's keep the comments to the end. If there's a specific question about anything I mentioned, we'll deal with that right now.
Did you have a question, Miss Francine? You're on mute. I don't see it in
Yes.
the chat.
I was gonna ask about the mold. I bought one.
Can you say that again? Your speaker's going out. Sorry.
Okay.
We can't hear you. Just type it. Just type it in the chat.
Sorry, Miss Francine. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat box, I can go ahead and ask on your behalf.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. I'll get right back to it. Let me just quickly skim over the roles and purposes. You guys can also read this later. There's some more examples of some of my guides. And then as far as the role or purpose of a specific guide, it might not be clear at first. So I highly suggest getting to know your guides. And we're going to do that in a minute. But when they do appear, you know, sit with them in meditation, ask their name, ask where they're from, ask if they've been human, ask why they're here, you know, what do they want? Ask these things. And then for the voices, so we're going to do a practical exercise here in just a moment to help with this. But I also want to speak to the nature of all these different voices that can be in your head. Some of them are louder, some of them are quieter. And it's important to know that the ego is going to be that loudest, most obnoxious voice. So it's kind of like, you know, your 5-year-old, mom, 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 mom. That's how I relate to the ego. But a lot of times the ego is the critical one as well. So if you're hearing the negative self-talk or any negative messages, usually that's the ego getting in the way, and you can use that as an instrument of guidance as well to kind of show you where you might want to look at doing some improvements or strengthening, you know, your meditation practice to be able to control the thoughts better. We also have other loud voices in our head that might be oppressors of some sort, whether it's personal, like a mean mom or dad, somebody abused you in a relationship, maybe, you know, just a really negative message you received from, I don't know, a religious clergy or something when you were younger, or even just messages you might have been told as a child through your religion or otherwise. These voices can be in our head as well. So again, when things come up and you hear it and you don't like it, or it's making you feel some type of way, take a minute and figure out, where's that voice coming from? Is this coming from, you know, past trauma? Is this my mom's voice? You know, get it out of there, because the voices of your guides are going to be more subtle and quiet, and usually it will take setting aside that intentional time to get quiet and still to be able to really hear and connect to those voices. Okay, everybody get a pen or a pencil, something to write with, and a paper. And while I wait for you to do that, I can answer a question if there's one.
No questions in the chat box currently, but I will let you know. And just to let folks know, the workshop doesn't technically end until 3:30. So there will be time at the end if we're unable to do that now.
Okay, awesome.
It looks like Samantha may have a question.
Sam, you got a question?
I can read that for you. If we have upper chakra blocks like the third eye, will this limit our connection with our spirit guides?
Yes, absolutely. That's a wonderful, wonderful question. Yeah, I don't want to get into chakras too much, but absolutely, if any of your chakras are blocked, yeah, you're going to have problems channeling this information. So as I was saying before about like having the loud voices and setting aside time to kind of get those out of the way, this isn't necessarily, some of us have, you know, more propensity to channel and receive information. Others have to work a little harder at it, especially if there's been trauma, or if you've been living in fight or flight for years on end and you're just in your head all the time. It's going to be some necessary work to set up a meditation practice, to start being able to find those quiet spaces in between the thoughts so that you can hear the voices of your guides. Because if your mind is in there all day, all long, talking shit, like, you're not going to be able to hear the voice of your guide, especially not if you're used to focusing on that. It's like, you know, the tunnel vision. You're staring at the TV and you don't hear, you know, your husband over here talking to you. The same kind of idea. So yes, absolutely. Great question. There can be a lot of work that may be required before you're able to really tap in and connect. Okay, everybody have a pen or something to write with? I prefer pen or pencil and paper. You can do this in the notes in your phone, but I just I kind of like to have the phones out of the way when we're doing a spiritual practice. So I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes and I'll put some music. What I want you to do is during those 2 minutes, just write down all the thoughts you have. Okay, don't worry, we're not going to be sharing this. This is just for you. So as horrible, as embarrassing, as ridiculous as these thoughts are, just give them space to come through onto the paper, no matter what they are. There's not going to be any judgment during this 2 minutes. We're simply allowing the thoughts to flow out onto the paper, giving them space, honoring them as they appear. Okay? And I have in the PDF that I suggest you guys do this for a week. Sam, this is a really good exercise to start getting the prerequisites for being able to connect and channel the spirit guides. So if everybody's ready. Oh. There we go. Okay, the timer is set for 2 minutes. Ready, go. Just write down every thought you have in whatever language you'd like. No judgment. Just let it flow. Okay, your 2 minutes is up. You can finish your sentence and then just put your pencil down, please. Take a minute just to read back what you've written. And again, this is just for you. You don't have to share it. Read it back without judging yourself. What I want you to do is continue doing this exercise for the next 5 to 7 days. Do it every day, any time of the day. And just begin to notice the patterns of thought that you're having. A lot of times this will help us become aware of negative self-talk, where we're punishing ourselves, berating ourselves, calling ourselves horrible names. If this is you, please, it's okay. We've all gone through this. I could talk for hours about how long I've spent getting all these little things out of my head that I used to say to myself. But this is a great exercise to start to notice what is going on in my head. What am I thinking? What voices are the most active in my thoughts every day, all day? And then you can start to pick and choose and discern which thoughts you want to keep having and which thoughts maybe we can put some effort on getting out of our head to make space for the voices of our guides and our higher self. So it's important when you're doing this exercise to not hold back. You can burn this paper when you're done with it if you'd like. It doesn't have to sit around for somebody to find. This is just for you to kind of get to know yourself better and to know maybe where you might want to make some changes. It's important to know that you are not your mind, just like you are not your body. And really what we want to do is to gain control of the mind, to gain control of the thoughts. Otherwise, the thoughts are controlling you. So I promise you it can be done through practice, through meditation, but the number one step is awareness. So this exercise is going to help you to gain that awareness and begin that work so you can connect with your spirit guides and hear that divine guidance every day. Well, I shouldn't say every day, because there are days when I don't hear it. There's days when I don't feel good. There's days when my third eye's out of whack and I can't hear my guides. Especially if you have anxiety or something like that, that can really get in the way, because it's like holding you prisoner in your body. And like Sam brought up, and in the next section that we're going to go over, I do talk about that you do need to be able to connect to the upper chakras, because the crown and the third eye is where the information is coming in from the higher dimensions. It's coming in through here. So if we're upside down, if we're clogged, if we're whatever, the information is just, it's not going to be able to get through. Does anybody have any questions about that practice? Was everybody horrified? If you were horrified, just type in the comments horrified. I was definitely horrified for the first year, at least, that I did this practice. The way I talked to myself was just awful. I would never talk to somebody else that way, right? But I would call myself all kinds of horrible names. Okay, we have some more experience, but before we move on, I want to reiterate one last time the enemy of expectation and judgment. Okay, I've said this a few times already, but it's very important. This was the hardest part when I first started meditating, because I'd been studying meditation. I'd been to Buddhist monasteries and learned formal, tantric meditation, Buddhist meditation, and I wanted it to happen right away. I wanted to sit for 4 hours and just connect to the universe and receive all these wonderful visions and messages. For some of us, yeah, it might work that way. And if you're one of those people that just has that gift, that's amazing. That's wonderful. I didn't have that. I had to work at it. And I would say it took me a year, honestly, of meditation practice before I really saw real results to where I could actually sit and meditate for an entire hour or longer and not be just tortured by the thoughts or even the body. Sometimes it's hard to just sit still. And actually, that's what yoga, the original intention of yoga is to prepare the body for meditation. So do some movement first, do some yoga, take a walk, go for a swim, do your workout, and then meditate. Get your wiggles out first. That's going to open up your body and your spirit to be able to sit still and be in that receptive energy. This receptive energy of allowing is our feminine energy. Our masculine energy is the energy we use to do. The energy of doing is masculine. The energy of being is feminine. So the more you can implement balance between these two energies in your life, the easier it's going to be for you to switch into the feminine energy when you want to meditate and receive information or messages from your divine guidance system. So when we have an expectation, okay, I'm going to hear this person's voice, or I'm going to receive this vision, or maybe you expect that you're going to fail. I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't sit still. Any expectation that you have, you're going to create an experience that matches your expectation because of the law of attraction. If you don't know the law of attraction, go ahead and look it up. There's wonderful books. Esther Hicks has the law of attraction channeled by Abraham. It basically says that whatever you're focusing on, you're going to get more of. So if you're thinking, I'm going to fail, I can't do this, guess what? You can't. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And if you're thinking you're going to have, a specific kind of experience, that's also going to get in your way, because you might not be open to the experience that the universe has in store for you. Always go in with humility. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what message I need to hear. I don't know who's waiting to communicate with me. I'm just here to find out. I'm just here in front of a blank movie screen waiting to find out what movie comes on. I don't know what movie's coming on. I don't know if it's going to be a comedy, a horror movie, movie reels from my childhood. I have no idea, but I'm just showing up in the theater and I'm turning my cell phone off and I'm waiting for that screen to start playing. So I like this analogy of the blank movie screen. When you do go into meditation or into receiving, close your eyes. Focus on that space between the eyebrows, the third eye chakra, and just have the intention to clear that space, to create an open, clear space within the mind's eye, create that blank movie screen, and just wait for whatever movie starts playing. And just like we did with the exercise, be careful not to have judgment. You will. I promise you will judge what you hear and what you see and what you experience, because that's what your mind does. That's what your ego does. And it's great that it does that. It does it on purpose because it's meant to keep us rooted in three-dimensional reality. So the ego is always going to be trying to rationalize things. No, you're not talking to aliens. You're crazy. You're imagining it. You're making it up. But the more you do this and the more you trust whatever it is that you're experiencing and just accept it, just allow it. Practice not having any resistance to it, whether it's in the form of expectation, in the form of judgment, doubt, condemnation, whatever it is. Just let go of all that. Be open to receiving whatever experience is there for you. Even if you think it's no experience, you just sat there and nothing happened. Accept that. That was what needed to happen. Maybe you just, needed to practice sitting still, and your guides are still out there. They're holding space for you to do that. Just because you didn't specifically hear them or feel their presence doesn't mean that they're not there. Okay, and then I like the last sentence that I wrote under the enemy of expectation. This also addresses Sam's question. I specifically didn't talk about chakras too much today because this wasn't meant to be a chakra course, but I did say that it is to understand and assimilate experiences from beyond the body. We must learn to see and interpret through our higher chakras. The lower chakras are the ones associated with the physical body and the false ego. Above the heart, the upper three, those are the ones that are plugged into the universe and to our source energy. So that's where we need to go to be able to assimilate those experiences. Okay, exciting. That's all the content. If you have a burning question, type it into the chat. Otherwise, I would like you to get into a comfortable position. Hopefully you can at least lean back in your chair. If you want to recline or sit on the couch, that's fine as well. We are going to meditate probably about 15 minutes. I want to leave some time at the end for questions. Okay, so the first meditative practice is just to clear the mind. Everybody get comfortable. If you need an extra pillow, please do that so you can sit still and quiet as much as you can for the next 15 minutes or so. Okay. If it's comfortable for you, go ahead and close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. And as you do so, imagine that you're drawing that breath up from the soles of your feet. Visualize that breath moving up through the leg channels. Inhale and draw that breath up further into the root chakra at the base of your spine. On your next inhale, feel that breath move up along the spine, all the way up into the neck and head. And finally, releasing from the crown with your exhale. Take 2 more breaths in this fashion, drawing up from the bottom of the feet, allowing that breath to travel all the way up your center column and release from the crown of the head. As you focus on your breath, have the intention to begin clearing the mind, creating that clear, open, receptive space within your mind's eye. You can do this by tuning into the empty space inside of your head and imagine a black movie screen. As your thoughts come up, just imagine them floating away in a helium balloon. And just come back to the sound of the breath without judgment, as the thoughts will come. Just gently send them away. Returning to your breath, returning to yourself. Focusing on that black movie screen. Before you invite in the voices, keep in mind that that voice of the ego is loud. The voice of the heart and your guides is subtle and quiet. So if that loud voice starts up, just send it away in a helium balloon. Ask it to leave you alone for a few moments. If it's comfortable for you, I'd like you to place your left hand over your heart and your right hand on your lower belly beneath your navel. Take a few deep breaths into your lower belly. Feel your belly inflating with your breath and deflating with the exhale. Feel as if you're sinking deeper within yourself, within the physical body, to those deeper layers of emotion and spirit and mind. Distance yourself from the physical world. Allow yourself to sink in, connecting with deeper layers of yourself. Feel yourself connecting with your heart space. Take a deep breath into your heart. Connecting with your heart chakra. With your next inhale, imagine that you're filling your head with breath, filling the inside of your head with breath. Taking a deep breath into that third eye chakra. The third eye chakra is associated with that pineal gland located right in the center of your head. Connect with that space in the center of your head. You can bring your hands down whenever you're ready, or you can leave them there for the remainder of the practice. Now I'd like you to imagine yourself somewhere in nature. This can be purely from your imagination, or it might be a place you visited or saw in a magazine. This can be a garden, maybe a park by your house, the beach, mountains. Anywhere you can visualize yourself in nature, away from the busy world. Once you arrive in this space, find yourself somewhere to sit, maybe on a bench or a rock or directly on the earth. Just imagine yourself sitting in this beautiful nature setting, feeling connected to everything around you, feeling connected to your own heart. Once you're settled in, go ahead and invite one of your personal spirit guides to join you in this space. They may show up physically so you can see them, or they may just show up in essence. Allow them to show up however they'd like. Be patient as you wait. Be open to any experience or no experience. And if a guide does step forward, ask them questions. Ask their name, where they're from, why they're here. And I will hold space for you to do that for the next couple minutes. let the sound of my voice gently call you back to your physical body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Deepen your breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. If you'd like to write down your experiences quickly before they leave you, I suggest doing that. Take your time coming back. There's no rush. I know we do just have a few precious moments left with each other. So we have some time for questions. If you can, please just type your questions into the comments so that Devoya can read them out. If you want to short share about your experience, can you just type that into the comments? We have very little time. We'd love to hear your experience and any questions you have about this practice or anything that we went over today. I'd be happy to answer that.
So I'm looking in the chat box and in my direct messages, and I'm not finding any questions from you all today. I do see some smiling faces. I see Miss Alyn. Do you have a question or a comment, Miss Alyn?
Yeah, I just made a comment that that 15 minutes went by like it was just a few moments for me. The breathing exercise, the mindfulness, and it really did help to reset my day.
Awesome, good.
Sorry about that.
That is definitely the benefit of any meditation practice. And as you see, it only takes a few minutes of intentional time to just connect inward. And it's amazing how much you can get out of that. Wayne Dyer always said you could get a whole night's sleep in 20 minutes of meditation. So I have yet to replace my sleep with meditation, but I think you get the point. And yeah, the more you do this practice, if you carve out time for it every day, twice a day, that's when you're going to start having more clarity and more open space for the guidance to come through. Thank you for sharing, Alyn.
Thank you.
And I did include these exercises in the PDF in detail so that you can recreate them on your own time.
I want to share that I had a beautiful experience too. And I saw a person that I think is a previous reincarnation of me. Amen. So is that possible to have previous reincarnations?
Anything is possible. There is absolutely no limits here except for your own imagination and your own willingness. So I really encourage you, yes, trust yourself that whatever you're getting, whatever you're feeling, go with that. It's right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I have talked to myself from past lives many times, so it's not far-fetched to me. I've talked to my future self as well.
Did I see a hand go up while I was on the phone? I apologize for that, y'all. I thought I saw a little yellow icon. I did not. All right. Well, in that case, I would like to turn over this workshop to Anna, as this is her workshop today, and have her close and do any final comments, suggestions. I wanted to let you also know that the folks who left me a direct message that would like a copy of Steffani's presentation today, I'd be more than happy to email that out to you folks, and I'll turn it over to Anna.
Thank you so much, Devoya. Thank you so much, Steffani. It was an amazing presentation. We enjoyed it. We learned a lot of new things. Definitely the meditation was very important for all of us to release all the stress that we have during the day. But most important, we would like to remember to all of the participants to fill out our survey. And also, if you leave your email address, we have a beautiful candle to enlighten our spirit guide, has a raffle prize. So please help us with those details. And Steffani, again, you did a great job, and we're looking forward to learn from you, because we realized through your bio that you have a lot of credentials that we have to take advantage of. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And if anybody wants to learn more about me or what I do, you can definitely jump on my website. It's lavenderlanehealingstudio.com.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Peace. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.